Hello and welcome to another and our final episode of the IDS podcast for season 2. And this is the last episode that we are going virtual. And I want to introduce Jennifer McGraw with us today. Jennifer, thanks for coming on with us.
Thank you for having me.
And just to give a quick, I don't know if a lot of people are familiar with what you do out here on Long Island, but you are essentially a publicist, or you do PR for interior designers and help them get published. So we're going to basically talk about publishing and different ways and different things that designers need to be aware of when trying to get published, and see where the conversation takes us. So before we do that, can you just, I guess, start by telling us a little bit about your background and how you came to work with interior designers?
Sure. It actually happened a little bit organically. I've always been in the PR and marketing space, and I kind of found my niche in this luxury home industry, starting with designers and then adding luxury brands into that mix. So currently, my clients are all interior designers or brands in the luxury home space.
Okay. And now essentially you work with interior designers. I guess I'll speak for you because I sort of know what you do, but you work with interior designers and help them get their projects published in a nutshell.
That is one part of it. And
Okay.
then there's the longer goals, which is getting them notoriety to have product collaborations with brands, and also book deals and speaking events and unique collaborations with companies like Paragold and First Dibs. So getting them featured is always one of the more important parts of having a publicist. And then there are, many other facets.
Cool. Yeah, I personally didn't even know about those other side of things that you do. I guess primarily because our relationship has pretty much involved imagery that we've worked on for mutual clients and whatnot. But that's pretty cool and that's pretty interesting. So let's, I guess, go back to the basics, if you will. And for designers who may not be thinking about PR, why is that such a powerful tool for their business?
Well, I mean, essentially all PR is getting their brand into the universe and controlling the narrative of the brand. So it's a little bit different than marketing, because the PR side of it really does control the narrative, and you need a publicist that really understands your brand so that they are speaking on your behalf and getting you out into the universe to be considered in many different ways. So perhaps it is a feature in a publication, perhaps it is something, a feature or a room roundup online. And basically it's super important because at the end of the day, it validates you, and it validates you in your industry, and it validates you with potential clients. And if, for example, a design magazine gives you a feature as a designer, then the homeowners or potential industry people looking at that, they understand that you are now considered an expert in your field. So it really is mostly about validation.
Yeah, it gives you, I think, authority, if that's the best word to put it. Where,
Yeah, exactly.
And from a client's perspective, if this interior design magazine cares enough to publish this designer's work, then they must be worthy of me giving them a call for my project.
Absolutely. That's correct.
So besides for, I guess, that authoritative presence, I mean, are there other tangible benefits for an interior designer who gets published?
Again, it depends on what your end goal is, but if you want to, let's say you're a designer and you love lighting and you aspire to eventually have a collaboration with a lighting company, the lighting company needs to see that you are a valid designer and people know who you are and people follow you on social media. You need a presence and that authoritative position because that's who the lighting designers want to collaborate with, right? Usually you'll see these product collaborations, whether it's lighting or furniture or rugs, with well-known brands. So in order to become a well-known brand, you have to really build up your PR pie, as I call it, your industry recognition, your your potential client recognition. So it all kind of like it builds exponentially to eventually, lead toward whatever your goal is, whether it's scaling your business or doing a product collab or having a book deal. At the end of the day, you need to be seen as an authority for them to want to partner with you.
No, that makes sense. So let me ask you, because you just mentioned social media or Instagram, for instance, how does publication credibility differ from just posting work on Instagram or your website?
So say that again, Brian.
How does publishing credibility differ from just posting your own work? Because if you ask, for instance, a younger generation, they might say, well, everyone's looking at Instagram, so that's more important to me than getting published in Dwell or whatever. I'm using Dwell as an example. But why does having the credibility from being published differ than just your typical social media, your typical website, and the advantages of that over your typical social media type of marketing that you're doing?
Right, got it. So your social media and your website is your own self promoting your own work. And then being published in a magazine is somebody of authority finding you and picking you and putting you up on a pedestal and saying, as a design expert, X magazine, for example, we feel that this designer is worthy of getting a feature in our publication. And there's not many features available. When you look at magazines and are they 6 times a year or 4 times a year, there's not that many features in a year. So it's pretty much the, common knowledge that if you get a feature in a magazine and it's by somebody else, it holds a little more weight than if you self-promote, but self-promoting is super important as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's the best answer, is like you said. And I didn't even think of it that way, but it's like, yeah, when I'm posting, because, even as a photographer, I like to get my work published, and it doesn't necessarily correlate for me as a photographer to extra work. And I think it's definitely different for interior designers. But that being said, like you said, if I'm posting my own work on social media, it's me just showing, I don't want to say showing off, that's not the right word, but it's self-promoting, like you said it best, versus, if your work is being shown in a magazine, it's other people think that the design is worthy, the designer is worthy, and the photographs are worthy of it. So you're getting people who are industry leaders that are making those decisions, not just some random Joe Schmo who's saying, go publish this in whatever magazine.
Absolutely.
So we spoke offline, I think it was a couple days ago, and you mentioned to me that there, I guess, are 3 pillars. And I don't know if you said the word pillars, maybe I made that up. 3 pillars to publishing or doing PR as a designer. So I want to touch on that. So if you don't mind, I guess, can you walk us through kind of the 3 pillars and what they are?
So I'm just wondering, are you thinking of the boxes? When I said
Maybe.
There were boxes that had to be checked when a
Yes,
designer...
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay. Sorry.
Okay, so that's a little bit different. I always like to remind designers that when they want to get published, there's a few things that have to happen for them to be considered. And I think this is what you were talking about, Brian.
Yeah, I called them pillars, you call them boxes, but I think we're in the same place. Yeah.
Yeah. So the first one is you have to have great design. So a designer sends in a packaged, finished, beautiful pitch to a magazine. And I say a designer, it could be a publicist or designer, whatever. So you have to have great design. So right there, a number of people will not make the cut because in the industry expert's eye, perhaps that's not great design. Then when you
So let me stop you on that for a sec before we get to the other boxes, because everyone thinks their design is great, obviously. So how does somebody differentiate what they might think is a good design, and this is not to like disparage anyone or put anyone down, but what they might think is a great design and what publications might think is a great design?
Oh, I mean, it's a little bit subjective, but I do believe that there are certain things that are in place that school designers and experienced designers can feature in their projects, and that's scale, and that's perspective, and that's the type of art they use. There is, using very unique and boutique vendors. It's all of those things make great design. If you have a living room, for example, and you put a sofa in there that is way too small, that's glaring to an editor or a magazine. They see that, that's like a huge red flag. For example, I'm just saying there are things that designers can do that are not okay, and things that they can do that are beautiful and perfect. And that is where all of it put together would be pleasing to the eye, great design. So now you have that. And everybody, obviously every designer feels that they have the best design, and that's okay. And they may, but there's only a certain amount of spots for editorial and these features in these magazines. So they have to then default after that box of great design to great photography, because that is where it can all fall apart. Because you can have great design, but if you do not have the project photographed correctly, you will not make it any further. And that is where somebody like yourself comes in. And it's so important to have a great photographer, because it can literally make or break a space. So then you have great photography, and then you have to look at the styling. You can have great design, great photography, and then the room looks lifeless, or the home looks, there's no sign of life at all. And that is the next spot that you can fall off the list, because nobody wants to look at that. So you have to have great design, great photography, great styling, and then you have to have a story to tell. So all of those things combined give you the best chance of getting published. And they are really all together. Now, you could have a great designer that has a great photographer and does their own styling, and that's fabulous. But I think it's important for designers to know, if you're all in on your project, you have to get the right photographer and a stylist, and or if you're not getting a stylist, really understand what is in and what is out in styling for the moment, and then craft a story about it, and then package it and get it to the magazines.
Yeah, I can't stress that enough from my own personal take, because if I'm speaking to a designer and their goal or their intention is to be published somehow or another, whether print or web, I always tell them you need to have a stylist. And the reaction I usually get is, but I designed it, I can probably do it myself. And I said, yes, you can do it yourself for people to live in it, but you can do it yourself for a 2D flat image. And it's different. It's different when you're in a 3D space looking at it or sitting in a living room versus when you're looking at a 2D image on a screen or in a print magazine. It's different depth, different textures, everything. So yeah, I want to stress that it's crucial, if your intention is to get published, to work with a stylist that specializes in styling for print or web.
Right. Or at least some designers that I work with do not use stylists, but that is because they do a huge amount of research to see what the latest trends are in styling, and they are capable of doing it themselves, and that's wonderful. So it's, it's another nut to crack, and it's another expense. So if you're starting out, you either need to really understand styling, and that is going through all the magazines and the publications and looking online and seeing how people are styling, or be willing and able to hire a stylist.
So if you can, I guess, put these, I thought there were three, I guess there are four boxes or pillars, as I call them, in order. I guess, can you put them for designers listening in order of importance from top to bottom, where they should put their focus? And then on that note, what happens if one of those is missing, like one of those boxes that they check? Can they still be able, is there still potential to get published without it?
There is potential. It depends on if you're going national, you're going regional, you're going like local, you're going hyper local, or if you're doing room roundups online. So there's always potential. Look, spaces are beautiful, and you have to assume that the interior designers make beautiful spaces. So not every home is the perfect combination of great design, great photography, great stylist, and a story, right? But you want to have as many of those boxes checked as possible. And there's a lot of opportunities to get published, but you start at the top. The national is the hardest, the regional the next, the local the next, the hyperlocal the next, and the room roundups online. I hope you'll ask me a question about them, because that is a new kind of trend in this PR world, and I would love to just give my 2 cents about that.
Okay, yeah, we'll get to that at the end. I have a note here. So let me ask you. I want to sort of switch gears a little bit, because when we talk about those 4 boxes, design and story sort of are in the hands of the designer, whereas photography and stylist, assuming you're hiring a stylist, are sort of in the hands of somebody else, a third party. Somebody's hiring me to do a project, someone's hiring a stylist. So I want to talk about for a minute that photography and styling side of things, because for an entire interior designer listening to this, the design and the story, I think that's easy for them, because they were doing that themselves. It's their own. So from a photography and styling perspective, how critical is professional photography and styling in the publishing process? And on top of that, how critical is it for a photographer and a stylist that specialize in interior design versus, a general photographer or a stylist who does styling for interior design, but also does visual merchandising for retail stores, or does a little bit of all different types of styling?
Right. So I think it's important, if you are going to photograph the inside of a home, you get an interiors photographer, because you know better than anybody the perspective, the layers, the lighting is very different when you're doing an interior shot than if you're doing a party and you're shooting people. So if there are photographers that are specializing in the interiors, I can't see why you wouldn't use an interiors photographer. You would not want to use a realtor photographer to shoot an interior space, because the end game is completely different. The real estate photographer is looking to do a wide angle, maybe almost a fisheye. What do you call that, Brian? A fish?
Yeah, wide angle. It's a fisheye, but yeah, just a super wide angle. Well, I think, look, the end goals are different. I mean, with real estate photographer, his job, and I can speak to this personally, because when I started shooting spaces, and I say it in quotes, back in 2012, I did real estate for quite a while, and my end game, my goal there was different. My goal was to two things. Number one, get the realtor a call for the house. And number two, help the realtor book their next listing. Those were my 2 goals. They weren't to get published, because there's no real estate. There are real estate publications, I guess, but it's more regional to different areas that show some nicer listings. But the end game is completely different.
And the composition is different of each photo.
The goal is to make every room look as big as possible. Correct. And have the most square footage as possible. Where, for me, for instance, with interior design, I feel like it's almost the opposite. I want to make this room look cozy and comfortable, not gigantic.
Correct.
And look, there's some rooms that need that. If you're shooting a great room, for instance, you need to show how great it really is. It's a different end game there.
Absolutely. You just wouldn't want to use a real estate photographer to shoot in interiors, because they're losing the layers. They're losing the depth. Their lighting may be different. And so the interiors photographer really have honed in on how to light the space, which, is usually a challenge, depending on where the windows are, what time of day it is, what kind of light. That's really important. So you wouldn't want to hire a food photographer to shoot your home. So if there are people that specialize in the interiors, space, I think it's super important for them. And the photography, like I said, can make or break a space. So you want the best. If you're investing in your project, you want to get the best photographer that you can.
Sure. Do you find that editors and different publications have specific visual standards that designers should sort of be aware of, and both from a photography and a styling perspective?
Absolutely. 100%. Yep. And so this is where a publicist comes in. When the PR person works closely with certain editors from certain magazines on the daily, they get to know exactly the nuances that each editor has and requires. So, yes. And they even almost, I would say, they do have lists of photographers that they will recommend. That does not mean they will not publish a photographer that's not on that list. That doesn't mean that. It just means that they do have they have their photographers that they like very much and that they know is going to be a beautiful finished project, great lighting, and the composition of everything will be great. And they've gotten the right amount of photos.
Yeah. So what makes, from the, I guess, the editor perspective, what makes a project, an image or a project publication worthy? What are things that they look for?
Well, okay, so let's just start with those 4 boxes. It has great design, great photography, great style, a great story. You have to have, for a full feature, you have to have all your primary spaces shot. So you can't get a full feature if you don't have a kitchen shot. So you need all your primary spaces, and then you need probably a spare bedroom, and you need a powder room, and you need a lower level if the lower level was done. Now, this is not, written in stone for every publication, but by and large, your primary spaces are all needed for a full feature. Now, there are kitchen and bath features where you can get away with you're just sending in the kitchen and you're sending 5 shots of the kitchen and the eating area. Fine. There are room roundups, which are your outdoor spaces, for example. So you're sending your porches and your patios and your swinging chairs, and that's fabulous. But for full feature, you need all your primary spaces.
Cool. I mean, are there any example? You don't have to give specific examples. I mean, have you seen situations where like designs were out of this world, mind blowing, phenomenal, and just the photography and styling wasn't up to par to the point where you just said, I can't get this published for you. You need to redo this or what? But this is a design where I could get you published if this was done properly.
It happens quite frequently. I have.
I want people to understand the importance, and I'm not trying to be self-serving here. That's not my intention as a photographer.
No.
But I want people to understand the importance of doing the process correctly and making sure you hire people that will get you where you need to go.
Yes, I have that on a quite frequent basis. I have one right now, and it is a beautiful home. It is very publishable, but it needs a different photographer and it needs to be styled. And it really is all about how much effort, time, and money are you willing as the designer to put into it. I just feel if you want to get published, you have to commit. And yes, so this particular project, I cannot do anything with it right now. It's beautiful. It is beautiful design, but the designer is leaning on me and taking my advice and saying, I am going to commit. I understand. I need to hire a stylist, and I understand I need to hire a new photographer.
Cool. So you've mentioned it twice already, and you said you specifically want to talk about it. So let's touch base on the room roundups for quickly before we shift gears, because I know you did speak about full features, which require all the primary rooms plus sub. So room roundups, I guess, are a different type of feature.
Oh, they're fabulous. So I want to say in about the past 2 years, I've seen these really explode. They're, let's just say Architectural Digest, let's say House Beautiful, for example, let's say Lux Magazine, for example. They have online stories and they do these room roundups, as I call them. And for example, one might be boho bedrooms, how to style boho bedrooms, for example. So you get I get these calls from on a daily basis, by the way, from a lot of freelance writers from many, many different facets and from Wall Street Journal and New York Times, all over the place. Hey, I'm doing a story on boho bedrooms. What do you have? So I will look through, and I only use professional photography, by the way, because all of my designers, they understand that they can only use professional photography. So they've all been shot, and I'll send in a room and they will love it and they will publish it and they will put it online with usually a photo of the bedroom, for example, a really nice quote from the designer answering a few questions, and then they put a live link to the designer's website. So this is online. So now you have how many hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people reading this, and there is a live link to your website. What will happen is that is such a great way to grow your social platform. Because people reading this, for example, this article, they may click on the link, they'll go to the designer's website and go right to their Instagram and follow them. So it's such a great way for designers and brands to try and grow their Instagram following, which is hugely important, as we all know. I don't even think we need to talk about it because we all know it's a huge chunk and a part of being validated as a designer or a brand. So I love them, and they live in perpetuity. They grow exponentially. You can put them on your social media. You can say, hey, look, great. So happy to be featured in this magazine, and you can put it on your social. You can put it on your press page on your website. You can tag the magazine or publication or online publication that just featured you, giving them the opportunity to cross promote. So there's nothing but love here. It's such a great way to get your brand out into the universe,
in front of so many eyes, and it's so easy now with social media and whatnot. It's just so easy to get everything out there.
It is.
Okay, let's shift gears for a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about the process, the publishing process. So can you, don't go crazy here, but can you give us a brief I don't know if summary is the right word, but insight as to how the publishing process works from start to finish?
Okay,
if that's an end goal for a designer.
Okay, so for example, designer finishes a beautiful project. What do we do with it? How do we
exactly?
Do it? Okay,
Yeah.
So designer finishes project, designer gets it professionally shot. I get the photos. So now I have the photos, and now what I do is dig, and I will send, or I would like to know all the basic information about the house. I need to know all of it. I need to know how many square feet. I need to know the address. I need to know who the homeowners are. Some of it is just internal only, but I need to know. And then I need to know any legitimate art that's on the wall. I need to know a list of uniquities. And I consider that items from First Dibs, items that are vintage, items that have been curated from the homeowners, from their worldly travels, their children's artwork that's on the wall, something they found at a garage sale that is absolutely phenomenal. Those are a list of uniquities, along with a little bit of more of an artisan type of vendor, like, for example, a really unique lighting company, a very bespoke rug company, for example. Those are your list of uniquities. Get them in a document. Then I create a story. And the way that works very quickly is the designer is going to just give me the entire rundown of this project. Who are these homeowners? How many kids do they have? What do they do for a living? What made them move from Kentucky to the Arkansas Delta? And why is this house here? And what is the goals? And we basically zhuzh it up and we package all this up. I get a great title, which is a really nice, let's say, a working title, so that when I send it to an editor, they're excited to open it up and read it. And that is it. And that's the package. It takes work and it takes time, but I try to do everything all at once so that the editor has everything in front of them so they don't have to say, oh, I like these photos. Tell me a little bit about it. I get everything done all at once and I give the editor, my job is to make their life as easy as possible. And that's it in a nutshell. And then you wait.
So how do you decide which publications to pitch these stories to?
That's a great question. It's really about the design aesthetic. If I have something super sleek and modern, of course, I wouldn't send it to Veranda, which is very patterned and colorful and layered. So you just have to know what design aesthetic lives in each magazine. And that just comes from doing it on the daily. And you just kind of get to know the style that each magazine would like. And then there's obviously the basics. Like I said, you wouldn't send a house on a lake to Ocean Home magazine. So you just have to know by keeping up with their publications, what kind of work they're featuring.
And what is that from I guess, designer perspective? What is that timeline like from the time a potential designer sends you imagery to potentially being published, whether print or online, which I'm assuming online is a little easier
and faster.
And faster.
Yeah. And faster.
Yeah. What does that timeline look like typically? And we're not going to hold you to it.
If they're very attentive and they can get me all the details quickly and I can craft the story fast, they can send me the photography and we could be ready in a week. But the telltale is what kind of lead times the magazines work with, because I can send them a project today and they can love it and say, we'd like to do it. And we are in August 2025 and they'll say, I like it for November 2026. So there's that. So print has a much longer lead time than online.
No, that makes sense. What about seasonal trends or I guess editorial calendars that designers maybe should be aware of? I mean, I know there are trends. We were talking the other day and I was telling you about this cool cottage I shot in upstate or in the Poconos, and you were like, oh, that's hot now. People are looking for that type of work. How does it work by trends? Is there a way for people to kind of see what's trending now other than just buying magazines or looking at magazines? And are there any like seasonal calendars, for instance, holiday editions or summer editions that come out?
Yes. So most magazines, printed magazines, have an editorial calendar, and it'll kind of spell out what they're looking for. They'll typically always look for outdoor spaces for summer issues. They'll look for a different style for fall and winter issue. I can pretty much look at a space or a feature or a project, I should say, a whole home, and I can have a pretty good idea of this. This looks like it would be a spring feature. This feels fall to me. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's really up to them and where your project sits relative to other projects in their edit well. And that's also a determining factor. If, for example, I have a designer that just submitted me a Frank Lloyd Wright style home and I submit it to a publication and they just have featured two Frank Lloyd Wright homes, even though this one is fantastic, they may say, I need to take a pass because I really just have featured two of those style homes. So then there's that, which, there's that other layer, which your project needs to fit nicely within their editorial, let's say, edit well.
Yeah, what's that lead time usually like, or it's just kind of up in the air? So if you have a house that would look perfect for a summer issue, I mean, are you talking about the previous fall to start getting that ready and pitched to editorial, or is it even earlier than that, or
I
later?
mean, look, there are sometimes they have a feature drop out and they'll have a spot and you're submitting right time, right place, and they're like, this is great. We need a feature for this summer issue. But mostly I would say anything that I'm bringing to editors now in August, we're looking at spring or summer of 2026. Again,
okay.
there could be like a winter spot available somewhere, but yeah.
So as you know, we're getting a little low on time, so I want to start wrapping up a couple ideas, and those are working with a publicist versus, I guess, DIY, and a lot of the mistakes that designers might make if they want to go DIY? Because I do understand, and I think you're understanding enough to realize that designers may not have a budget to work with a publicist right away, and or photographer, but they want to try to give it a go and see if they can learn the way things work. So can you give me some of the most common mistakes that you see designers make when they sort of try to do this on their own?
Ooh, so it's a lot of work, first of all, and that's why people like me have full-time jobs
Yeah.
doing this. And when the designers, if they don't put enough time into it, they will often send off their project and it won't get opened because they're sending it to the wrong person. That editor isn't there anymore. They're sending it to the general email. So that's
They're not
one
pitching it
mistake.
properly.
Yeah, pitching it properly, but I do encourage them to try. It's more a matter of like a PR person is really in the know about all the who the contacts are, who the correct people are, and yeah, and I also think another mistake that designers could make is just sending a Dropbox link to their photos or sending photos embedded into the email. That's usually a no-no. So then it kind of hampers their ability to get seen as a whole project. And then maybe the third mistake would be not packaging up as a complete package. They're sending bits and pieces, and it just at some point something drops off the chain, and they don't get the consideration that maybe they should get.
Yeah, so I'm gonna touch on another mistake that I've seen, and I am by no means a publicist, but we've known each other for a few years, and I've worked with a bunch of other publicists and publications before, and that has to do with exclusivity and publishing your project prior on social media, etc. And I know that's a big no-no, so I don't know if you want to touch on that.
Yeah, that's a great point. Typically, even the nationals, they don't want you to throw up on Instagram before you send it to a publication to be considered. Look, it's okay to take some tight shots, some detail shots of some of the rooms. But if you put the entire house out on Instagram with their hashtag Fire Island House, whatever it might be, and you show the entire house, the editor will see that, and now they'll see it as it's already out in the universe and it's not as valuable to
It's
us.
published already.
Yeah, it's published already.
Well, I feel like people don't realize that on social media, I guess technically it's published. It's funny because when I register my imagery with the United States Copyright Office and they say, is this published work? The United States Copyright Office considered published work anything that somebody else has seen before. As long as
Wow.
somebody else has seen it, it's considered published. It's not just sitting on your computer. If I send my client a gallery with their final images, it's considered published. So,
I was unaware of that.
yeah,
That seems
I mean
pretty
that's
harsh.
strictly by copyright law. That's strictly by
Right,
copyright law. That's not in any means, editorial or any of that, those type of publications.
right.
Um,
They will ask you
so
to take it off your website. I know they'll do that, and everybody happily does. So
yeah, of
you
course.
get your project, you put it on your website under your portfolio section, and then we get the okay that it's going to be featured. The publications will politely ask, would you be okay if you hid it from your website until it comes out? And I've never, ever, ever heard of a designer that said no. So everybody
Oh,
hides it on their website, and I think that's fair.
yeah, no, that's definitely fair. Um, so let's, I guess, wrap up with, I guess, some final advice for designers. I mean, are there certain points in a designer's career when hiring a publicist makes sense? Like, what's that point? How does a designer know where, okay, they're at that point. I think this is my next step.
Oof. That I am going to say that's a really tough question to ask because it's a little bit about budget, finances, and
End
it's a little
goals,
bit
obviously.
about, yeah, but it's a little bit also about what their end goals are. I mean, look, there are designers out there that they have enough work, they just want to do work, but they don't want to be published. They don't want to go to events. They don't want to scale their business. They don't want a collaboration. So financially, they may be able, but they don't want a publicist. So usually the people that are ready for the PR people to come in, it's because they have, definite end goals. They want to scale their business. They want bigger projects and less projects, right? So they want like the bigger projects, but less of them. And they know that they want to get to a place to be an industry expert, and they have the finances to fund this.
So for a designer who's out there who's not ready yet to invest in a publicist, can you give me, I don't want to put you on the spot, but can you give me like one thing that they can start doing now to prepare themselves for that ultimate end game?
Yes, I think that they should be aware of any panel discussions that talk about getting published and try to meet the editors. There are so many events at High Point Market, at the D&D, the A&D, where they have panel discussions with editors, and the editors will talk about what they like to see in projects and how can they be approachable. And yes, please submit some work to me. They have to put in the legwork to start to know who the people are, and they have to start getting educated on how to do these submissions. And here's the only problem. Once you start to get so busy, you don't want to be doing what I'm doing because you don't have the time to do that. I'm not going to lie, it's time consuming. But if they want to start educating themselves, start watching all of the panels that come through, start attending IDS events that have these types of educational, panels, I guess we call them. Yeah. And just start to collect names and start to, connect with editors.
Yeah, and one thing I will also say I guess this will be my self-serving promotion is, and it doesn't have to be me, anybody, just because you're not ready to hire publicists doesn't mean you shouldn't get your project photographed properly, because you may never get access to that space again once a homeowner is in there full time. And you can always take a project that was shot or photographed a year ago or 2 years ago, and if it still holds up nicely, try to, at that point, pitch it to publications. So while you still have that access, if you have any sort of budget, go get it photographed at that point, because then at least you're set up down the line when you're ready and you have a library of professionally photographed spaces that are ready to start being pitched to publications.
I agree 100%. I mean, that's the number one thing that a designer should invest in is their photography. So they've gone through all this work to get this beautiful project done. They must get it shot professionally, because that is going to live on their website, and people will get to their website. They'll get there through Instagram, through their own self-promotion. They'll get there through vendor collaboration. And when you get there, that is the last place usually somebody is when they call you. They will be on the designer's website. They will be looking at the beautiful photography. And why not show your project as beautifully as you can? So one does not go hand in hand with the other. The PR does not go hand in hand with the photography. Always get professional photography if you can afford it. And that you will, I agree with you, you will always have that.
Yeah, I think I don't want to say necessarily designers, but I think just a lot of people in the service industry in general forget that, they think, I designed this beautiful space, I should document it so I have a documentation of what I did. But they forget how correlated the photography is to their brand and what they're putting out there. And the imagery that you're putting out there from some projects, they are your brand. They represent your brand more so than your logo. Your logo is just your logo. No one is going to remember your logo in 3 months, but they will remember that beautiful family room they saw with this beautiful light coming in and the chandelier, and they will remember that stuff. So yeah, it's so much more to your brand than anything else, photography.
Agreed.
Now, why don't you give us, I guess, a quick rundown? If people are interested in finding out more, maybe they want to try to pitch a project, how can people get in touch with you? What's the best way for them to reach you if they're interested in finding out a little bit more about what you do and the process and all that stuff?
Sure. So my email is the best way to reach me, and it's Jen, at JenniferMcGrawPR.com. That's JenniferMcGrawPR.com. And I'm on Instagram as Jennifer McGraw PR. And I'd be happy to help anybody out.
Cool. And I can personally say we've worked together on a number of projects. It's been an easy process, at least from the photography standpoint, to get some work done with you. So, Jennifer, I want to thank you for your time. I think this is definitely enlightening for some of the designers here at IDS Long Island locally, but even for people that might listen outside. I don't think anything you said changes. Nothing we spoke about is specific to our region. So thank you for coming on. This was definitely a unique conversation compared to a lot of the other episodes we have, and I think it's important for people to know, to have an end game, because all this does ultimately is help grow and